It's hard to be a historian of something these days. It's hard for you to do primary, original research because everything's been looked at. You might be able to come up with a new angle. I would guess that's the primary reason I like Arkansas pottery, because it's a subject that has not been researched, and I love to do research.
To my grandfather, his art was the most important thing in his life.
Well, one of the main things that people did when they visited Benton was to go to the Pottery. It was a very popular tourist spot.
Camart pottery was displayed at state fairs, other exhibits at convention times. You would see Camart.
I have these questions that I want to answer so I can get this critical mass, and will I ever walk away from it? I think I'm stuck with it. Arkansas Art Pottery collectively refers to three companies that operated in Arkansas in the early part of the 20th century. Washita Pottery in Hot Springs, 1904 to 1908. Nile Oak Pottery of Benton, Arkansas, 1909 to 1947. And the Camart Pottery from 1926 to the 1980s. Nationally, during this period, you had major pottery companies, primarily in Ohio, manufacturing pottery for aesthetic purposes. Arkansas had a vast amount of clay deposits. These clay deposits caught the interest of individuals, primarily in Ohio. They felt that they could develop Arkansas clays to a point of being able to manufacture a variety of ceramic products. These companies could immediately begin producing wares that they could sell. The efforts of these talented ceramicists allowed Arkansas art pottery to move into the mainstream of what is known as the American art pottery movement. Washita Pottery, collectively referring to about 4 different companies between 1905 and 1908, relied heavily on former Rookwood pottery. In fact, Arthur Dovey and another employee, Paul Cox, were responsible for instituting art pottery production at Washita by late 1905. Washita Pottery Company, though it failed, ultimately within 4 years, had lots of publicity in the state of Arkansas. We have several wonderful photographs that we have acquired from Arthur Dovey's family. And these photographs show the interiors of the showroom at Washita Pottery. And what's really interesting is the photograph from the Washita Pottery Company's exhibit booth at the Arkansas State Fair in 1906. Just wonderful examples of Washita pottery. With respects to Nile Oak Pottery and its production of missionware, it was a continuation of a family business in Benton since the early 1880s. Charles Hyten's father, John, came to Arkansas and would work with potteries.
When my father and his brothers took over the pottery, when his stepfather moved away, it was for a brief time called Hyten Brothers Pottery. By early 1900s, it was called Eagle Pottery,
which was one of the most successful pottery operations in Benton in the production of utilitarian wares.
And then when they started with the Nile Oak, they took the name, the type of clay called kaolin, and reversed the spelling of that, and that became Nile Oak.
So we have Charles Hyten. What he's facing is a dying industry. You have the introduction of tin, you have the introduction of glass. With his business dying, you have the coming together of Arthur Dovey and Charles Hyten. And what they would do is to institute and developed the swirl process that ultimately became known as missionware. Camart is derived from the first 3 letters of Camden, and the first three letters of Arkansas. Camart Pottery started as the Camden Art Tile and Pottery Company in 1926. It was founded by a group of associates led by Ohioan Jack Carnes.
Jack Carnes was in Houston, Texas, was already involved in the oil business. And of course, the oil boom in Arkansas in the Smackover field was in the 20s. And so the state was flooded with people coming in to get their part. So that's why he came to Arkansas.
Somehow he learned or became aware of the extensive clay deposits.
The clay for the pottery near Chittister had been there forever. But it took somebody with Jack's creativity, his know-how, to realize the potential that was there.
He apparently was well enough informed of the pottery operations in Ohio that he was able to go back to Ohio and hire a talented group of ceramicists, designers, clay workers, kiln burners to come to Arkansas and institute Arkansas's third art pottery manufacturing concern. And these group of associates included John LaSalle, also his wife. What LaSalle did was create in Ohio the prototypes of the Camart Lesselwares that would be the first line of pottery that Camart produced. Camart Pottery began production in the summer of 1927.
My grandfather, Ernest Lechner, came to Camart Pottery to paint and moved there from Ohio, where he had been residing.
Mr. Carnes heard about my father, Leonard Cole, and needed an artist, so he got in touch with my father, and my father came down here.
After the retirement of Ernest Lechner and the departure of Leonard Cole, Camart Pottery, with a few exceptions, never went back to decorated wares. And from that point, Camart pretty much centered on the industrial castware throughout the rest of its existence. Together, Ouachita, Nile Oak, and Camart, with elements of art, tradition, and industry, established not only economic development in Arkansas, but also it's very important to the mainstream of what was going on in the American art pottery movement. If I had to guess how close I am to having the complete story, I would probably say 50%. 14 years, and I only have 50%. But the problem is, the more information I find, the more questions. The new pieces of pottery that I have never seen before, each one of those pieces of pottery speaks to me. It says, David, you need to ask this question and find the answer to that question.